that the life that we are living here on earth is not the full life that we have been called to live. Often we identify the beginning of our life with birth and the end of our life with death. But the truth is, your life is an unending timeline, and death is just the door to take us from a darker room to a brighter room. And so I'm saying that to tell you this, that there is a great war happening around us that we may not see, but you sense it, you know it's there, you've experienced it, and it is the war of light versus darkness. There's a darkness in this world that is looking to consume, but there's a light in this world that is absolutely undefeated. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning, is living a life with the one, the victorious one, who reigns, the undefeated champion over life and death. And his name is Jesus. In John 1:1, it says, in the beginning. It takes faith to believe those three words. It's the same three words in Genesis 1:1. The first three words of the Bible demands faith to believe it, that there was a beginning. And in John 1:1 it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then in John 1:14 it says that the Word became manifest in the flesh, and his name is Jesus. And he is full of both grace and truth. But between verses 1 and 14, there's a beautiful, beautiful picture that Jesus gives us. And I want to show it to you today. It's John chapter 1, verses 4 and 5. The Word, Jesus, he gave life to everything that was created. I want to tell you today, you are not an accident. You are not a mistake. You are not something that just happened. You are divinely inspired, created, and made for such a time as this. And his life, Jesus, brought light to everyone. The light shines into the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. That's the Jesus we know. Undefeated. He cannot be defeated. Darkness looks like it reigns right now, but Jesus is the one reigning as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. The darkness cannot win. One of the translations says the darkness can't even comprehend the light. It gets all discombobulated and confused. It can't even stay in the presence of light. That light separates the darkness. And that's what becomes so critical to us in our faith. Jesus said, I am the light to the world, but I have called you to be the light in the world. You know, in Genesis, it talks about creation and how God first created light before he even created the source of our light here on earth. Let there be light. And then later, 14 verses later, he creates the sun and the moon. And he says, I'm setting up two great lights in the sky that will guide you. You know what's interesting about that is the moon actually doesn't produce light. The moon just reflects light. The moon reflects the light of the sun. Are you listening now? Jesus is the light to the world. We are the light in the world. We are called to be a reflection of his light. That's what God has called us to be. And when we step into that light, the darkness cannot and will not defeat us. Because Jesus, not because of us, but because Jesus, he cannot be defeated. He defeated death, hell, and the grave on our behalf. He did it for us. So I want to make this very personal today and give you two very simple principles. That as we're living this life, we have this opportunity. You can either spend all of your energy, all of your strength, all of your time thinking on and then acting out, cursing the darkness. Or you can simply turn the light on and let the light take care of the darkness itself. Let me make it practical to you. You could spend all day logging on Facebook and complaining about how bad the world is getting, how many bad decisions are being made, how the country's going down the toilet. You could do all of that all day, right? That's cursing the darkness. Or you could turn the light on and lead people to Jesus, and Jesus will show them the way, right? When it comes to sickness, you can spend all day cursing COVID, cursing cancer. You could do that, or you could just declare the healing power of the living God over somebody's life. Turn the light on and let the light take care of the darkness. And that's why the scripture says the battle doesn't belong to us. The battle belongs to the Lord. Now, as a Marine, as a warrior, I love to fight. But with Jesus, I don't have to. I just have to surrender. What a thought. I don't have to exhaust myself. I just have to surrender. And he's going to do it for me. And I promise you, he can do it better than we can. He will do it better than we can. So when it comes to this, I just want to take this in because in just a little bit, we're going to get to watch 15 or 16 people this service be baptized. And before each one's baptized, they're going to get an opportunity to share their why, their story, their testimony, why they believe. And in that, I need you to understand that there's power in the telling. The scripture says that you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And that truth becomes really evident to us. So I want to show you this in another one. The truth sets us free, but in John 14:6, Jesus told him, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. And my point to this is simple. Truth is not a what, truth is a who. The truth is Jesus. And when we invite Jesus into our life, doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. Doesn't mean you're going to get it right every time. What it means is that you know the truth. And even when you stray away from the truth, as long as you come back to the truth, you'll find freedom. As long as you come back to the source of truth, you'll know it. The righteous fall down 7, stand up 8. How is that possible? Well, you fall down on the 6th time and you realize, okay, I tried it my way and it didn't work. Now let me get back to Jesus and make it work. So Jesus himself is the truth. And when we invite Jesus into our life, now we have a freedom to be able to do what God has called us to do. And that leads me to the final point, that your personal story, it has power. Your story has a tremendous amount of power. Revelation 12:11 tells us, and they, the saints, the believers of God, they have defeated him, the devil, the thief that comes to steal, kill, and destroy. They have defeated him by 2 ways. First, by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus. And second, by the words of their testimony. And they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die. So we defeat the enemy. All the thoughts coming into your mind, the struggles that you're dealing with, the temptations, the unctions to do something stupid, to say something stupid, to, talk like we have an expression, talk like a drunk sailor in the military, right? All of those things, all of that is up to you. Devil's not making you do it. It's up to you. If you believe in Jesus, then the first part of the solution to overcoming the enemy in your life has already been accomplished. The second part is now up to you to tell the power of your story. And it defeats the enemy over and over again. It reminds him that he lost. He lost on the day of Calvary. He lost when Jesus said, it is finished, it is finished. And when each and every believer willing to share their story, willing to share, because the word testimony, it really is 2 words in the Greek. So when the Bible was written in the New Testament, it was written in Greek. And sometimes our English words don't really define what this means so much as it does in the Greek. In the Greek, it was written in 2 words, and those words mean, well, here's what testimony means. It means ammonia of your test. That's a joke. I don't even know what ammonia is. I think there was like an old school song written about like repeating the word money, but I don't know what money is. Here's what the word testimony really means. It means that you take ownership and personalize it to yourself. That's the first meaning, the first part of it. And the second part is you present evidence of others in your life, through your life, that you are a witness to Jesus. So I want to share with you just for a few moments my personal testimony. I want to present the evidence to you of what Jesus could do with somebody's life. You know, in high school you get those like, you know, prettiest eyes and, you know, whatever, all those, personality. I don't know what all those things are, but one of them is like the most likely to succeed. And they had like an off fun topic one was the least likely to succeed. Part of that had to do with I knocked out my high school principal my senior year. True story. And I went to jail for 5 days, like big boy jail. It was a regional prison because the county jail was full. And you think you're bad, especially when you're younger, you think you're like undefeatable until you go into a place where some grown men are telling you the bad things they're going to do to you. And then you start to realize, like, I'm just telling you flat out honest, when I was in that moment, I didn't grow up in church. I didn't grow up with God in my life. We grew up non-practicing Catholics. I don't even know what that means. I just know we didn't go to church. And I didn't have any reference point. I saw religion and I hated it. Because I could just see this is about man, not about God. And I was searching in my heart, do I really even believe? I believe something. I believe there's something out there, but what is that? Who is that? How do I connect to that? And I didn't know how to process it. And I had started off, I grew up pretty rough, grew up in the inner city, very poor. My mother was working 2 to 3 jobs to put 4 children, food on the table for 4 children. She grew up incredibly rough. Terrible things happened to her in her childhood. So she was looking for love in all the wrong places. Jumping around relationship to relationship, and every one of those relationships affected us in a different way. I grew up seeing horrific things, watching my mother beat half to death over and over again, seeing myself and my siblings go through stuff that's just unspeakable. And there was an emptiness that was on the inside of me that I couldn't define or couldn't explain. And by 8 years old, I started to sample some things to fill it. So by 8, this is true story. My mother was here first service in the front row. She could testify to it. By 8 years old, I had already been drinking alcohol, smoking dope, chewing tobacco, got my first tattoo when I was 7 by my oldest brother. I was like a little grown man, in my head at least, by 8 years old. Fast forward that to 14, I was a wild individual. And I had no aim at anything. My love language was violence. My passion was anger. And I was just looking for something to fill it. And my mother ends up giving her life to Jesus when I'm 14 in a Christian church. And then I was the youngest of 4, and I was the only one left in the house, so I got to go to church. When I got there, I heard the gospel message for the first time in my life. And this is what I thought. If there's anything true out there, that's true. But what in the world does it mean to me? I couldn't connect the dots. How could God want me, forgive me? And so I walked away from that experience and had truth in me, but still was so deceived and so empty that I just kind of went even darker with my life. Which fast forwarded to the knockout of the high school principal, which fast forwarded to me facing a 7-year prison sentence for doing it. Which then, my dad, who I barely knew, met him 5 times in my entire life. He was a highly decorated Marine in Vietnam. He came with the entire Marine Corps recruiting station, all in their dress blues, to present an option to the judge to get me in the Marine Corps versus getting me into prison. And I didn't know that had happened. And when I came out for my arraignment, the judge said, hey, somebody came forward on your behalf today, tried to give me like plan B for you. But I told him, you're too stubborn to choose it, so we're just going to take it off the table. Here's what you're facing. I was like, excuse me, sir? He's, yeah. I don't know what that other option is, but I promise you, if it means not going back into that madhouse, I say yes. I don't even know what it is. I say yes. He goes, you mean that? I said, I 100% mean that. I'm yes. He says, okay, call the bailiff to bring him in, and comes walking my dad and all the Marines. And there was a lot of stipulations. I had to be a very good boy for a few months before I went in. And I kind of was. I just didn't get caught. And then I went to the Marines, and I found some identity. I found discipline. I found something I could be passionate about. They kind of redirected all that energy into very singular focus, which helped me a lot. And then I started to do really well in the Marines. But you know what? I was still empty. I was more empty on the inside. On the outside, I had it all together. I was Marine of the Year, had all these things going on for me. And on the inside, I was still broken. I was still empty, and I was still longing for something to fill it. And then on September 11th, 1998, my life was changed forever. 3 days before that, my daughter went out in our front yard, my only child, and got bit by a rattlesnake. 3 days after she was bitten, she was being medevaced from the military hospital to a children's hospital to have her leg amputated. Her life was in danger. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely helpless. She's the only one that I could protect. She's the only one that I deeply, deeply cared about. And now her life is in danger, and I can do nothing about it. And I went home. I called my brother up, my middle brother. He's older than me, but I called my brother up, and it was already a confusing situation because my brother used to be a drug dealer. Now he's a pastor, and I was never really able to figure that out. I was like, dude, are you just using this as a front? Like, are these all your clients? What's really in that holy water? And I called him up, told him what was going on. He had a word from God over my life that if I would surrender my life to Jesus, that Jesus would take this away like it never happened. And that confused the mess out of me. How's that possible? She's being medevaced. She's having surgery in an hour. She's getting her leg amputated 1 hour from now. That's not possible. So I said a lot of 3- and 4-letter words to him and then threw the phone against the wall. And when I say phone, let me bring it into perspective because about half the room has no idea what I'm about to talk about. But I had one of those 1998 cordless phones they looked like a Vietnam era walkie-talkie, had the big antenna. And so I'm on that. I throw it against the wall, just busted a million pieces. Maybe not a million, maybe like 10. Wasn't that strong. But at that time, just to be very transparent with you, like the only thing I was trying to fill that emptiness with was like working out, being a great Marine, all those things. And they helped, but it never truly satisfied me. But I was like really, really big, muscular, like so big I had like muscles, like earlobes for muscles, And for some weird reason, still don't have the answer to this, but for some weird reason, when I threw that phone against the wall, I pounded my fist down on the sink, and then I started beating my chest like King Kong into the mirror, looking at myself. Really weird. And I'm yelling at God while I'm doing it. If you've got something to say to me, why don't you man up and come say it face to face? Tough guy. Ooh. And what happened next changed my life forever. I'm going to tell you, if you know me, you know that I am so against fruitiness and weirdness in church. But I believe in the power of God, and I want to see the power of God move in people's lives like never before. Because it's the power of God that changed my life forever. I reached for the doorknob of my bathroom, and it felt like 1,000 volts of electricity shot into my body. And for the first time in my life, I was knocked off of my feet and landed on my hands and my knees. And I immediately tried to push myself up. Now remember, I was really big and strong. I was tough, and I couldn't move. It felt like somebody's hand came on my back. It wasn't hurting me, but it was absolutely immovable. The strongest force I'd ever experienced in my life. And as I'm struggling to push, and I can't move it a millimeter, something on the inside of me just breaks. And I start crying. And I ain't talking about like a teardrop hit. I'm talking like that ugly cry. That, you know that you know, don't act like you ain't never had no ugly cry. You done had an ugly cry at least once in your life. Even if it was a child, you had an ugly cry. I hadn't cried since I was 8 years old. 8 years old was like this defining year of my life for some weird reason. And so it was like 16 years of crying let all out in one moment. And in the middle of this, the room began to disappear. Before my very eyes, all this immense bright white light started to fill the room, and it looked like waves of an ocean. And with every wave crashing into my soul, I started to experience a peace that I never knew was possible. I felt love that I didn't even know existed. And now I'm like real bad, like snot stringing out of my nose, drool pouring out. I mean, I got like squirt guns for tear ducts. And then in the midst of this light appears a vision of Jesus. Now, I didn't ever read the Bible. I didn't know what it would be, but after I got saved, for 14 days we were stuck from a hurricane in that hospital that my daughter would be medevac to, and I read the entire New Testament in the King James in 2 weeks. But when I read through it, I read about Saul on the road to Damascus and how he was knocked off of his donkey onto his donkey, and saw Jesus. I was like, that's what happened to me. But then when I read Revelation, and I saw a Jesus that no religious picture had ever painted. You know, the religious pictures of Jesus kind of looking like a hippie, like he doesn't smoke something too much, holding a lamb under a tree. I know some of you really like that picture, so if you do, it's okay. It's okay. It's just not my flavor of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not looking for the Jesus in a tuxedo t-shirt at the front of the Leonard Skinner concert either, like Ricky Bobby's friend. But I saw the Jesus in Revelation, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. I saw a warrior, a king, crown stacked on his head, eyes full of fire. The word of God written across his chest. I remember when I was in that library in the hospital and I read that, I jumped up in the library, like I'm not really good in libraries, and I jumped in the library, I just heard, that's the Jesus I saw. Everybody looking at me like, what? Oh, never mind, I'll tell you about that later. And Jesus said, well, you wanted me face to face, so here I am. I was like, I take it back. Like, this is not exactly what I was expecting. And he said, I have a great plan for your life. And you have been resisting me for far too long. You have wondered why and where I was at when all these bad things were happening to you and your family. But I want you to know I was there for every one of them. I'm the reason you're still here. I'm what kept you together till this moment. And I want to use your life to tell this story and to tell everybody you ever meet about me. I'm going to heal your daughter, and I'm going to use your life to make a difference. I didn't know how it was possible, but in that moment, I didn't care. After that, drove up to the hospital, got into the pre-operation room, doctors, surgeons, nurses, the whole pre-op room is full. They let us come in just to comfort Candace as she was being sedated, going in for an amputation. They took the bandages off of her foot. And I don't know if you've ever seen a rattlesnake bite, but it's horrific. It looks like chemical warfare. Her foot had swollen like a balloon. Her whole calf was 3 times the size it was. Blisters all over, skin splitting open. It was rough. And when they took those bandages off, she was 100%, absolutely 1 hour later, completely whole and completely healed. Not a single blister, no infection, no venom left in her system, completely whole. The doctors declared it a miracle. And one of the doctors believed in many gods. Like your shoelace could be a god, true story. I said, can you explain this? They said, there's no medical explanation for it. Tissue can't rejuvenate itself, it's impossible. Swelling can't reduce itself in this amount of time. Blisters just don't disappear. This is impossible. It's a miracle. And we are going to declare to the hospital it's a miracle. And the other doctor, he said, well, some higher power out there in the universe must have decided it wasn't time for your little girl to lose her leg. And I thought, is there ever a good time for a little girl to lose her leg? I'm not sure about that. Don't know if I want to trust in that whole system. But I told him, let me tell you about that higher power. And I told him all about Jesus in the bathroom. He thought I was nuts. I said, but you don't have an explanation, and I do. The next morning, I was able to lead that man to Jesus. And that started a life that I've never looked back on. Now 77,000 people. God has used my life to be able to lead to him. And it all started, listen now, it all started not with me being holy and being perfect and being right. It started with me just having enough faith to believe that Jesus, you are who you said you are. And I'm going to sign up for this, and I'm going to move forward with it. And since then, not one single moment, not one single second of one single day have I ever doubted him. Have I ever wondered, God, where are you? Every single moment. A guy that was probably agnostic, who was filled with violence and rage, completely turned into a new creation. I've never looked back. I've never regretted it. I've not been perfect. I've made my share of mistakes. I'm always honest about that. You don't need to know every one of them, just like I don't need to know every one of yours. Right? But in the end, I know this. I have fallen madly in love with Jesus, who he is, what he can do, and what he will do for each and every one of our lives. Can we just give Jesus one big thank you for his word today and his truth?